Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Scouser Tommies with me, Jim Boardman, and as always, Reid, as we look ahead and look back on what's going on with Liverpool, but from a local perspective, you know, because maybe things aren't the same, the way we see things and how we hear things, to what you might only get to hear if you've got to listen to it all from afar. And there's plenty of stuff to listen to from wherever you are with stuff with Liverpool at the moment. All the stuff off the field continues with stuff like the stuff from Man City and their fans and their people. There's lots of that we can talk about, but maybe more fun is to talk about a couple of games on the way, but a couple of wins. Last time we did a podcast, Jay, we were looking ahead to that City game. That was the one right in our sights. And I think you said you'd have took a point on that one. And, well, we went two better.
Yeah. A week's a long time in football. I guess 44 days is a long time in politics as well. Yeah. But, you know, things can change quickly, as we know with the prime ministers. You know, there's a revolving door, and as one goes in, another comes out, and as a poor performance goes out and a good performance comes in. So, yep, a point would have been, I still would have shook hands on a point right up until the final whistle, to be honest, because I was never fully at ease for that whole game. But I think we did say it wouldn't be a surprise did we turn up and, you know, put a performance in and get the 3 points. It wouldn't have been a shock to us. And lo and behold, that's what we did. But, you know, false dawns or are we going to kick on from here? Who knows? But I think the evidence on Wednesday night sort of, you know, backed it up a little bit. Like, maybe we are just trying to get back to the old basics, as cliche as that is, and keeping clean sheets. Well, you can't lose if you keep a clean sheet. So, you know, you build from the back. And I'm more happy that we've kept 2 clean sheets in a row. You know, the goals are lovely and performances of attacking players has been great this week, but keeping those 2 clean sheets at the back, I think, was really good for us. And, you know, the lads who are back there, like the keeper and the centre halves and the defenders who've played a part over the last 2 games, it probably means a lot more to them to keep a clean sheet than actually probably get the 3 points, because that's their bread and butter at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's like a constantly evolving back four as well, isn't it? Because we've had, you know, if you think about the last sort of 3 games, even the number of different players we've had in all the different positions, I think Virgil and Ali are probably the only constants. So we've had to swap and change for different reasons, injuries and so on and so forth. But I mean, I think on the City game, it was just good to see Robbo coming back and being Robbo, wasn't it? I mean, that was the sort of game that was suited for him. But I mean, discussed this a little bit on other podcasts, but then I want to see if, you know, just about everyone I've said this to, see whether you're the same. How happy were you? Not in a nasty way or anything. How happy were you when you saw James Milner was starting at right back against City?
I was shitting myself, if I'm honest. You know, it was, you know, pick your poison sort of thing, who starts at right back or centre half. Delved in with, you know, the delight that Henderson wasn't playing and we were having our strongest midfield 2 out there. But Foden against Milner before the game, I was shitting myself. Honestly, I thought, like, if we keep a clean sheet after the first 20-25 minutes, I was saying to the lads who was with the match, it's like a cup tie. Like, we're the minnows and we're playing away at home at like some giant football team, and it's like, right, you get through the first 20, you quiet the crowd. In this case, it was like, you know, your crowd behind you.
Yeah.
And and then you see to half time, and you go to 60, 65, you make your changes, and then, you know, you kind of throw the kitchen sink, because it would be, and see if you can get something. And as it transpired, it sort of had moments that in the game, but Milner's performance rolled back the years. There was moments where I know he did play really well, but anytime Foden come inside, obviously the pace of him, it was scary. And I think a lot of people have glossed over that, because anytime he went down the outside, he shut him down, and he had the help of Elliott. But he was probably 3 or 4 times Foden come inside, and he went right the way across the box, a la Luis Diaz, really. And it was worrying, but there's not much you can do. And if you just fast forward it, like 3 or 4 days later, when he come off the bench and he tried to sieve Michael Antonio in half, like, that was James Milner in a nutshell. Like, that's the sort of the thing we want from him. We shouldn't have to rely on a man of his age to do it, but he can do it.
Yeah.
And coming off the bench for 15 minutes as he did the other night, and we needed that. Break up the play, get stuck in, you know, kick someone up in the air if you have to. But Sunday was vintage sort of defensive right back performance, and you can't knock the lad. He's had a lot of average performances, but if that's the one that one good one he's going to have all season, then I can live with that.
Yeah, I think someone said on Raw the other day, he's an honest player, and that's what you want from him. You know, he'll admit if he's struggling. I'm sure Klopp knows what his limitations are, and I'm sure he'll be the first one to say them. But, you know, they can work on things like that and work around it and take that into account. I wonder, though, how much it was sort of like a personal thing with him as well, because there's this thing we've talked about before. We hardly ever boo ex-players. The odd one gets it. Raheem Sterling, the prime example, because of the way he left. But on the whole, if an ex-player comes back to this club, comes back to Anfield to play against us, he'll get applauded on and off the pitch. He'll get a cheer when his name gets read out even before kick-off, you know, and you know, we always sort of welcome our old players back, our old servants, if you like. But unless, as I said, they've done something dodgy. Now, whether Milner's seen as doing something dodgy to one of the richest clubs in football by running down his contract so that they couldn't get a small transfer fee for him, I don't know. But I've heard their fans booing him in the past when he's had the ball. It's just, you know, a very small time thing to do, if you ask me. And I don't think he deserves it. I really don't. And I just wonder whether that's something with him as well, that he's thinking, you know what, after what I did with you, and that's the way you're treating me now, I've got something to prove to you. And then on top of that, I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Foden said that when he was in the academy, Milner was there and he really looked up to him. So it's kind of like, you know, the master teaching the apprentice a few tricks.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just the humility of the people of the city and the club. Because, you know, we've said many a time on this podcast, like, the type of people that we are, we're open-armed, we're welcoming, you know, your front door's always open, sort of thing, and there's always a seat at the bar for you if you were to come in. And, you know, we don't forget those who've helped us, whether it be large or small. If you've played in a red shirt, and you say there's a couple of exceptions, but if you played in a red shirt, then you've done something that thousands of people in the city and in the world would love to do and would give anything to do. So you know, you've achieved something there, and you'll be rightly given a round of applause. So yeah, maybe it's just a sort of, you know, a personality culture thing, and, you know, that sort of mank attitude that, you know, it's them against the world sort of thing, and flicking up the Parker and bouncing down the street and giving the V's to everyone, all Liam Gallagher style, that, you know, everybody hates you, but you'll carry on because you're a rock and roll star sort of thing. And, you know, it's just a bit disrespectful. Like, Milner done nothing but honesty for them, as you say. Like, that's the word. But, you know, you put Grafton, he's been around the houses, like Newcastle, Villa, Leeds, but, you know, all proper football clubs. And he went to City at a time when they were growing into a club that they are now, legally or illegally, however you want to look at it. But I can imagine he give it all for them, and, you know, he played multiple positions like he has for us, and, you know, it shows a lack of understanding. It probably shows the type of fan base that they've got now, where, you know, the real footballers, fans would probably give Milner a round of applause, but these sort of modern day bandwagon jumpers, you know, just because it's cool or it looks good on video for your social media to boo a Liverpool lad, even though he's got history and heritage with Manchester City and won your trophies, then it probably sums up that sort of club as what they are now. What they were 20, 30 years ago is completely different to what they are now.
Yeah, it's true. And I think, let's get on to the City fans then before we get back onto the game too much, because it can't be ignored what happened there, because there's this sort of like the story in a nutshell, in case you've like ignored all the stuff that happens off the field, is that Klopp kind of called them out over the money. And without going on and on about it, Liverpool are higher up the league table of money in the top flight than other clubs in the top flight are. But, Liverpool can spend big on transfers by carefully planning the transfers. Liverpool do well on sales as well, which is something that doesn't always get recognised. Liverpool do quite well. They bring players in and quite often make a profit, even on players who don't get used, because it's just very carefully done the way that it's managed. Liverpool's wages are under control. It's probably why it took Salah so long to get a new deal, because we're not going to go and break the transfer structure too much, the wage structure too much, and then get other people, when all of a sudden it spirals out of control. So, there is a difference and there's limits. Liverpool have got a limit. I'm 90% sure if Pep Guardiola said, somebody's available for 200 million, can I have him? They'd go and find a way of getting him. They'd find a new sponsor straight away from that country and get him in. And maybe this, maybe that's not being fair to them, but I think it is, because that's all the evidence is there. That's kind of how they work, and there's no limits, no worries, no room to be worried about making a mistake. If you make a mistake financially and you're a club like Liverpool, you pay for that mistake. If Nunez turns out to be the worst signing ever, which some people are hoping for, then Liverpool have lost that money then. That's not going to come back. That's not just going to be, not going to go to daddy and say, can I have that extra money then because I wasted it on that toy? That's not going to happen. So Liverpool have to be more careful with the money, and building the ground up and stuff like that, increasing the Anfield Road is all part of this work to kind of make the club fend for itself effectively for finance. So it was right he said that. But then that kind of built into this like hatred, because City fans, absolutely, or the modern City fan, they absolutely despise anyone pointing out to them all of these facts, all of this information. They hate it. And it even then became a sort of claims that Klopp was being xenophobic. But then at the ground, what were their fans doing? I mean, is this the way to behave, that they were singing chants about Hillsborough and Heysel, and there was graffiti, and in the end Liverpool had to call them out on it? And what did City do? As far as I'm aware, nothing.
Yeah, they tried to deflect and come out with other sort of stories, like, that the poor old bus was attacked, no evidence of it. Klopp was making xenophobic comments, which is a large statement to me, when actually he was just stating fact. And they're not the first. They won't be the last club who come to Anfield and sing things about Hillsborough and mock people who've lost their lives and, leave graffiti all over the stadium, which they did do. And, it's hard evidence there. I think we've spoke about it before. It's long overdue that things like this need to be called out. And I'm glad that Liverpool did, maybe on, what would be deemed in quotation marks the biggest game of the season, because we've been the top two clubs of the last 5-6 years. So it highlights that, and I didn't see the TV evidence, but people have obviously circulated videos from TV coverage, and it was clear as day that it could be heard. Just happened to be that this seat I was in the ground, I couldn't hear them, so I didn't actually remember that they were there, but so be it. If they had blue plastic flags, then I might have noticed them, but other clubs seem to do that.
If they started doing that thing now where the Man United fans turn up to games and they all kind of dress as if they're going to a funeral or something, they all dress in black, have they started doing that now, City, as well? Because then you don't even see them then, do you?
Well, I think it's all this Stone Island sort of brigade in it, like, let's all get the badge in and prove that we went to game, and what does it mean? Like, you go to games to support your team, it's not a fashion parade sort of thing. But getting back to the point, like, I think they've sort of come out with some half-assed statement like 5 days later. I think it was released yesterday, or this morning about like we're going to speak to the fan groups and encourage sort of education and stuff, but that's not enough. And I heard something the other day, like, well, maybe if fans are making derogatory comments and chants, then you just take away the ticket allocation. And why not? Like, if you can't be trusted to go to the game and support your team in an honest, truthful way and not degrade people who've lost their lives and tragedies that have happened, then why not take the allocation away or lower the allocation or something like that? Because I'm sure there's probably a core fan base of City fans who wouldn't want that, who probably enjoy actually going to support the club and the recent times that they've had, and that other clubs have suffered the same things, but there's been multiple teams that come to Anfield and do the same stuff, and we've spoken about it before, the old lower league bingo chants that like you robbed our car stereo and the sign on sort of thing. Like, it in the end it's boring because we've heard it all before. If you come up with something new and refreshing, then actually you'll probably get a round of applause.
You will actually, because
it's original.
It's a laugh. It's that word that's been kind of made into something it shouldn't be now, but that what we used to call banter. You yourself, like you and your mates, like you've got your blue mates at work and stuff like that. You're exchanging banter with them, aren't you? It's not nasty. It's good natured. It's a laugh. And, there's always someone ends up with a tail between the legs a little bit, and next day it comes back and it's turned around. And that's what football rivalry to me really should be now. In this day and age, in this modern times, that's as bad as it should get. You should have a bit of taking the piss out of each other, but not nasty. And the other thing, I think you're right with the getting, when you're saying about them having the tickets taken away, you think about it, you welcome them into your home. If you welcomed someone into your house tonight and they started giving you shit like that, you wouldn't be welcoming them. They wouldn't be back, would they? You'd never invite them back again. That's it. You've had your chance. You wouldn't even get to finish the brew. They'd be out. So, if you're coming as a guest, great. Come and enjoy the game. Get behind your team. You don't really help your team anyway. And that's the other thing with this I've never understood. Singing chants about Hillsborough is not at all helping your team. If anything, it makes the home fans louder and more angry and gets them more on the back of your team. So, you're doing more harm than good, as well as being totally stupid. But another thing, I've not had a chance to read it all yet, but I saw a thread from someone last night that Nicholas McGeehan, who's a researcher, occasional writer, and he talks about Gulf migrant workers' rights and Petroball, as he calls it, on Twitter. And he just had a short thread on the Klopp xenophobia stuff, and he was pointing out that Abu Dhabi have people in place at Man City, senior members of the Abu Dhabi regime, if you like, in place at Man City, including Simon Pearce. He was formerly the Director of Strategic Communications for Abu Dhabi Executive Affairs Authority, and is now a senior advisor. And just reading through the thread, it's basically that it's worth a read, but basically his sort of job is to kind of help the image that's there, sort of deflect people away from what's really being said. Often when there's criticism of them, rather than answering the criticism, send some back the other way. And this thread, it's about 10 tweets long, I think. If you think about it, what they're basically doing is as he said, it's a classic tactic that UAE and other states and PR agencies, classic tactic is like, they've appeared to encourage people to write pieces here, there and everywhere, but, they sort of find a fault, find something they can have a go at, make something up and make that the story, turn it away from what's really happened. And what's really happened is a load of Man City fans abuse Liverpool, abuse the memory of Liverpool fans, if you like, and that Klopp's been made out to be xenophobic instead of actually saying, yes, you're right, we do have stupid amounts of money. And it's sad in so many ways that the mainstream UK press kind of just buy into it and don't really care. They just enjoy watching the fights go backwards and forwards, so they get a bit more clickbait each week.
It's quite similar to the Newcastle situation, which we've had, and Philippe Auclair, who come out and basically lambasted Eddie Howe for
brilliant for
the in quotation midget that he is. That was great, because all it took was one member of the media to come out and say that. Now a lot of others won't follow, and the media will push whatever narratives they want. They will influence in whatever way they deem fit. And that's not just for football, that's for society and politics and stuff. And, Newcastle, if you probably got an honest Newcastle fan in the street and spoke to them and said, like, what do you reckon is going on now? They probably it's good, but all this money and stuff, and what do you think of it, where the money's come from? They probably like, well, it's not for me, but, we take what we can. And if clubs were openly more honest and fan bases were more honest and just said, like, look, like, it's not the ideal situation where we got our money from, but it's the hand that we've sort of chosen, not been dealt with, and we'll take the good ride while it comes, then you might have a little bit more understanding for them. But to have the arrogance, which Man City do, that it's not me, Gov, it's always someone else, like, that let's always deflect and let's always look for somebody else to blame or other reasons and other loopholes. That's why they're fast becoming a very dislikable club. Like, Chelsea were very similar in a way with Roman and his money, but they were openly honest. Like, this is where Roman got his money from, and he's not really asked. He's just going to spend. But they're also got a very, very bad fan base historically. But this City thing, it's open arrogance, and like, I don't want to slam the people of Manchester, because I'm sure there's a lot of really nice people in Manchester, but they're absolute opposites of what we are, literally like 32 miles or 34 miles as people. And they're very much in the same situation, except they've got a little bit more sort of financial infrastructure in the city, but they're a working class city at heart. And as people, really, we're very, very similar, but they seem to have this chip on the shoulder. And whether it's like United of the 90s and now City with all the money, it's sort of made them into some sort of monster that nobody really likes. But yeah, maybe it's a City thing, that like a sort of Liverpool versus Manchester, but they're not making themselves liked at all and deflecting when, your neighbours in your city have had a tragedy and lost people, and then your current top rivals have lost people due to a tragedy, and you can't even have the humility to come out and just say, okay, we're very sorry, we're embarrassed at the behaviour of our fans, we'll push to do all we can to try and eradicate this. It literally would have took a couple of sentences, but they decided, as you say, with the PR exercise of deflect and hope that people will get on board with them and sort of feel sorry for them. And I don't know, it's something that won't change, especially with certain clubs. Like, you fully expect when Chelsea come to town, they'll probably give the same old sorts of things as well, and it won't change much. But it's gone on far too long now. We're over 30 years of this, and things need to be put to rest, and that's like the family's peace of mind. And the fight for justice will always go on. We've always said that, but you can't possibly keep allowing this to happen and upsetting people and allowing things just to continue like it's nothing really.
No, and I think they also maybe they don't. I mean, I don't think they give a shit, to be honest. I don't think a lot of them are lacking empathy. They're just knobs, basically, the people that go around doing this. And if you let yourself kind of join the crowd that's being knobs, you're a big knob yourself for doing it. But that's what they get like. That's how it makes them. And they're blind to it. I mean, I wonder how many of them are the same. Like, they wouldn't sit in an office, they wouldn't sit in a factory and come out with that shit. And as you probably know, I go to Manchester and stuff work-wise, and there's people from kind of, the days of people just working like 5-10 miles away, 20 miles away even from where they live, they're gone now. People work all over the show around the Northwest as well, for definite, and you're right, the cities are so similar. It's a shame that's what they're doing, but I suppose the best way to answer them for now, because it's the families they hurt. That's what I was going to say. Sorry. When we get upset by you, we're not so much upset for us as we're upset for the families and the survivors, and knowing what they've been through and knowing how this is opening old wounds up again. And it's just heartless, senseless, and shows you for what you are. And if that's the badge you want to wear, Manchester City, then you wear it, because it really suits you right now. But as I was just about to say, then I think the best way to answer this stuff is on the pitch. And we did. It was like you say, it was a tense game in itself, but disallowed goal thanks to VAR. That amazing goal from Salah. I mean, what others can you think of all the other standout moments in that game? For me, it was just like one great big nervous ball of excitement watching it. And the joy, of course, of the VAR being overturned, but then Salah, that was just an amazing goal.
Well, we did say before we played the game last week that we would be playing City and the officials, and poor Tony Taylor did as much as he possibly could to, aid Man City in his quest to get them the 3 points, and if that included not seeing shirt pulls and obvious fouls and rugby tackles and attempted headlocks and stuff, then we have to just do it the hard way. We've climbed the hill the hard way, as they say. It was horrible and exciting, and it's the best atmosphere at Anfield since before COVID. I think that can be easily said, and it's took something like that to galvanise the fan base and the team. And I went on Wednesday as well, and there was times when the fans were up, but I think a midweek game in West Ham, it's not a European night, it just sort of hasn't got the same appeal. But there's not really been anything to shout about since football's returned proper since like the COVID season, because even though we got to the cup final of Champions League last year, there was not really much of a tie to get excited about, like especially the semi-final. We were pretty much coasted through after the first leg, and we just sort of had to do a professional job. So those old European nights we've not really had, and the games last season against the top clubs, it sort of fizzled out with a draw. So the whole thing rolled into one, and then just seeing that little baldy fella on the sideline having an absolute meltdown again. And as you were saying about the fans, like they chant what they did, and it incenses the home fans, and it just creates more animosity and atmosphere in the stadium.
Yeah.
And at the same time, his head just seems to get bigger and bigger in terms of what's going on inside it. The cogs are all turning, the steam's coming out of his ears, and he has an absolute meltdown. So they're not doing their own manager any favours, because he literally cannot handle Anfield. I don't know what it is, but he has this mental block, and he seems to go off the rails. And Klopp's behaviour with the linesman maybe a bit over the top, but his behaviour for the VAR official and the fourth official for the VAR check was hardly exemplary. So you can call one thing and not the other, but as we said, where the Manchester referee was not really going to, listen, Pep, we're probably back on the coach on the way home. Just calm yourself down, and we'll have a chat in a game of cards or something. But yeah, it was just good to see everything work. There was not one player on the pitch who gave less than 150%. Everyone had a good game at the very bare minimum. There was some exceptional performances, but you couldn't say anyone really had a bad game. And hopefully now, if we can do the business this weekend and then going into next week, if we put a string of 4 or 5 wins together, all of a sudden the season starts to look a lot less brighter than what it probably did 10 days ago, when we were sort of coming off the back of Arsenal and just thinking, wait, we'll get through the Champions League and see what we do in the league, and we'll take it from there. But a couple of wins has rocketed up 4 places in the table, and a couple of wins against Forest and Leeds next weekend, we could be finding ourselves back in the top 4. And yeah, that's a bit of a fall from where we've been in recent years, but given the start we've had, I think we'll all happily take going into the World Cup break in a few weeks' time if we are sat 3rd, 4th, 5th in the table, and knocking on the door, as they say.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Yeah, and I think, it's not that long ago that Premier League teams could get away with half a dozen defeats in a season and still win the league and things. And it's been said so many times, Liverpool's points totals in recent seasons that where they didn't win the league would have won them the league on countless other seasons through the Premier League history at least, or at least since, it's 3 points for a game and there was that many teams in the division and so on and so forth. Another thing that's quite interesting as well is because City and Arsenal had their game postponed in midweek so that Arsenal could play the European game, it kind of also takes away that game in hand thing, because this is what was getting forgotten. As well as playing badly and not picking up enough points, we were also at least potential 3 points down because of the game that got postponed for the Queen's funeral. So now, if you look at the table, there's only Newcastle and Spurs that have played one more game than us. So it feels more realistic now as well when you look at the table. I mean, we are only on 60 and we are in 7th and we are 11 points off the top, but there's no sort of games in hand where you sort of, will we win, will we not, who's it against, and those top two teams, at least one, there's going to be points dropped there. They can't both get 3 points from when they do finally play each other. So it is, as we were saying, it's not now to say, we're going to win the league, but the idea that it's totally written off, I think maybe we can just put that to one side for now, that get your heads down, get winning, get the results in. And as we've already said, I think you said it earlier on, going back to basics is probably the way to do it, because if we win every game from now till the end of the season 1-0, I'm not sure. I mean, my nerves will probably be shredded and things like that, but, that's going to put us in a good chance of winning the league. So that's obviously a tall order, but 2 clean sheets in a row, and it's that man, isn't it? It's that man, Ali, who just somehow is starting to get back to being that man who, whatever else is going on in front of him, we know we can rely on him if they get past the rest of them. And he's I've said it before, he's probably one of the best signings that Liverpool have made in the Premier League era.
Yeah, and can I just say a quick big hello to Sky for the top 11 table that they put out last week, and then quickly reverted back to the top 10. That was a nice move and rattled a lot of cages and incensed the fume around the whole nation. But yeah, we're back in the top 10 now, so there's no need to worry. It's normal, back to normal. I just thought that was very funny to lash that in. But you're right, the big fella at the back, and I think Klopp summed it up perfectly today, saying he's very good at what he does and he's handsome too. Yeah, like, he has these moments. He's had moments throughout his whole Liverpool career in a season where you can sort of pinpoint and say, that was the moments that, sort of the penny dropped or the ball got rolling. You think back to, the Champions League stage into Napoli, that sprawling save he made. Obviously, the West Brom header, the assist against Manchester United, and then this week an assist and then a penalty save. I don't think a keeper's had a much better week than what he's had in the last few days. So we are very lucky to have him. He is, without doubt for me, the best keeper in the world. I don't think anyone really comes close now. Jan Oblak was a close rival for a few years, but I think he sort of declined a little bit in the last 2 or 3 years. And when you compare the fella who stands in goal for City and tries to pretend he's a number 10 compared to Alisson, goalkeeping wise, there's a big level of gap between them two. There's a reason why Ali is Brazil's number 1, even though Ederson probably is a bit better with his feet, and there was a couple of moments on Wednesday where Alisson got a little bit carried away in a few moody kicks, but when he's called upon to do the goalkeeping actions, he does them perfectly. And yeah, without him, without Virgil, 2 massive signings, we literally would be floating around the mid-table. It's so easy to say, but we're not a one-man team, but we're literally a team of 3 or 4 world-class players, and we've got Mo Salah up top and other players dotted around in positions who were very good. But you take these couple of lads and they literally elevate everybody to the next level. And yeah, long may he stay fit, and hopefully Brazil have some sort of tragedy in the World Cup where they can't score goals and, they finish every game 0-0 and they go out and he comes back nice and early and has a little rest because we are going to need him. We've got a couple of lads in reserve, but let's be honest, nobody fills you with the confidence as that man does.
No, that's the truth, isn't it? I think you sort of forget how good someone is until you sort of realise who's there who could come in the place. And that's not having a go at the people who could come in the place. It's just saying that the gulf in class is immense because of the class of that man. And I think we talked, just as well, this rotation thing as well, I think, having this ability now just to move people around. We hope to see players start coming back more, but I just love the way how well Robbo played when he played at the weekend, and then how well Tsimikas played when he came in his place. And, if we're going to give Ali credit for his assist against City, and that was a brilliant goal from Salah, then the assist from Tsimikas after the ball from Thiago, the assist for Nunez from Tsimikas was absolutely brilliant. And it's going to cause Klopp some headaches. I think we know that Robbo is going to get the nod most of the time. If nothing changes, you would expect Robbo to always get the nod, but it just lets us use them both more sparingly and keep them both really fit, and whenever they are called in, they should be right on the game.
Yeah, I think it doesn't take a genius to see who is the overall better player for us, and it is Robbo. And I think it was mentioned on the Raw podcast, like 1 minute into the game, shoving Bernardo, turning around, give me the ball.
Yes.
The crowd buy into it. I think we spoke about it as well last week. Like, you just want, something to just get the crowd going in, and it all works hand in hand. But, for all that Robbo's got, I think sometimes Costas's delivery in the air is better. I think Robbo puts a better ball sort of driven along the ground, or, a couple of feet off the ground. That's his sort of trademark. But if we are looking to play to Nunez's strengths, then a ball in the air, because he's a handful in every way. But if Costas can deliver them a few times a season and he can run onto them and put them away, then we won't go far from a bit of glory. But it's good to have. We need it on the right hand side. I think for all we pleased Milner, something's not right with Trent. It's very obvious. I don't want to give Gary Neville any credit, but he pointed the other week about his positional sort of stance and the way he approaches sort of one-on-one defending. He's very reserved and flat-footed, and it's very easy for the player to go past him. And there was a couple of moments on Wednesday, I know it was windy, but he misjudged the flight of the ball 2 or 3 times and allows the opposition to bring it down and get a run at him, and people just seem to be going past him like a lollipop, man. But maybe young Calvin Ramsey will be knocking on the door soon. Maybe we get Kanate back and Gomez can sort of go out there and challenge him a little bit. But we do need that healthy competition on the right-hand side. But I suppose we could say that all over the pitch. We're sort of, when you look at it, we're bare bones, really. We're scraping the barrel, like 2 or 3 lads for 1 or 2 positions. Like up top, I've just seen now, Klopp said in his press conference today that Nunez will be checked before the game tomorrow. I know he got taken off and it was a precaution due to a potential hamstring injury, but even that's not good. We're already down a couple of star attackers in Diaz and Jota, and I suppose if it's one game, it's not enough for us. We can get by, but we can't seem to catch a break at the moment with injuries, and it just seems to when it rains it pours for us. And we would just like a spell of 20 lads fit, but we can't always have what we want in life.
No, I mean the thing about the 5 subs, and everyone lowered sort of, I don't know what point it kicked in the Premier League, but certainly clubs lower down the end of last season's league table were saying that 5 subs is too many and it's not fair and all this sort of stuff, which I don't really believe is anything other than nonsense from them. But it's not really been something we've been able to take a great lot of advantage out of, because if everyone was fully fit, we could put 5 players on who were all players that would probably fit into just about any other Premier League team. That's where we should be at, but injuries have got in the way. And it's something it's something that we need to get fixed, but I'm sure we can do. But, we can't, we have to look at why this is happening, why are players getting injured all the time. Is there something in it? Is there something we're doing wrong? Is it just bad luck? And hopefully we can look at it, but also maybe admit that in some cases that some of these players are not going to get back to playing every game, and we can just start to sort of move them out and, get someone else in the place. And talking of moving out, there wasn't just the lettuce that lost the job yesterday, was it? Poor Steven Gerrard has been let go by Villa, and apparently Brendan Rodgers is very disappointed in it. He doesn't think managers get enough time, and he's obviously saying that from down the bottom of the table, having had. And let me just check: have they had a worse start than Villa? Yes, they have. They've had a worse start than Villa. So, was it a surprise to you that Gerrard? Not so much that he went, because I think it's inevitable with that kind of run of results, but surprised that it's got to that state with them. Or do you think maybe that was a job too big too soon for him?
At the time, it sort of seemed like an opportunity for Gerrard. I think was probably the right way to put it. It's probably now put to bed any sort of chat that he is the man to take over Klopp. If Klopp's to see out his contract, I think it's 4 years left to run. Could be wrong on that one. Someone will correct me, no doubt. But I think, he went to Rangers, and there's not much more you probably could have achieved at Rangers. Maybe you could have stayed another year or two and maybe got another league title or whatever. But the ambition of the Villa owners, the money they've spent, and I know they've had a couple of injuries, which doesn't help anybody, especially to the lads you've brought in. But they're ambitious and they want to see Aston Villa back to the high heights that they were at several years ago, whether that was consistently, challenging at the right end of the Premier League, or if you take it back further, winning European Cups, then Stevie probably isn't your man. But when a Premier League job comes knocking at your door, it'll take, a set of bollocks to sort of turn around and say no. And I know Mick Beale's done that at QPR to Wolves, but he's literally been a manager for 5 months, so that's probably common sense more than anything.
Yeah.
And not only that, Stevie was obviously working in Glasgow and his family are in Liverpool, so, logistically, Liverpool to Birmingham isn't that far away to Liverpool to Glasgow, and if you want to come back home and have a few pints in the pub, it's not that far down the motorway.
No.
Which was the story on Monday night, and whether you want to believe whatever, he was in a local pub. He grew up in Huyton, which is where I'm from, so it doesn't take long if you are Steven Gerrard and you are in a local pub in Huyton for it to suddenly get round.
Yeah.
Local WhatsApp groups, and whatever state he was in may have been Chinese whispered and made a lot worse than what it was. He might have been there for a lot less or shorter time than what was made out. But I think inevitably the writing has sort of been on the wall for him, and I think Brendan Rodgers is only saying that because he might have had a few quid on someone else to go before him and actually got good odds on it. So I think it's sort of a race between who is going to go, whether it was Brendan or Stevie, or even the fella across Stanley Park. He's not exactly pulling up trees, but he shouted at Klopp and he gets them, so he might get a little bit more time.
Yeah, he's got one more point at Everton than Gerrard got at Villa, so
but
now,
if you get the fan base, you're all right. And if you shout at the fella who wears red, you're all right.
That's it, isn't it? With Everton, it's literally that. If you're running that club and you're thinking, how the hell can we pick a manager who the fans will like? Because they're so fickle, aren't they? And that they soon fall out with people. How can we pick one they like? And you just go through a list. Who's pissed Liverpool off in some way? Yeah, and can we afford them? And then you sorted.
Yeah, it's crazy. But regarding Stevie, I think it'd probably be best for him if he's going to continue his managerial career, to probably take the rest of the season out.
Yeah.
And I know that's very early on. We're only in October now, but there'd be no harm in him going round and sort of learning his trade. I know a lot of managers and coaches often travel round several clubs and other managers and sort of shadow them and learn from them.
Yeah.
It wouldn't do him any harm to do that because, he probably just need a bit more experience, and maybe it would be a case of you step down a level, you go down to the Championship. There's a lot of big clubs in the Championship who would take Steven Gerrard the name, and he would probably learn a lot more as a manager in England. I know Scotland to England is very different in terms of levels, and get a lot more credit in the bank if he went down to the Championship and done the hard yards and maybe got a team into the playoffs, or if he got really lucky and had a good run of form and brought someone up. But if he takes himself away from the limelight of the Premier League, it probably won't do him any harm, and some time off won't also do him any harm. And I just for a little shout out to the Villa fans as well, who were singing "Sign On" to a lad who's multi-millionaire and probably not losing any sleep at the fact that he's probably lost his job and will not be having to go down the job centre tomorrow morning to sign on.
It'll be your club paying for all these pints in Heighton for the next 6 months, won't it?
Just another thing of like fan bases who've got uneducated views, but he'll be fine. Like he's not going to be short of offers, I don't think, in a few months' time, and he's done punditry, and if he wants to delve his little toe back into a few TV appearances, I'm sure he'll probably see himself in a few months. Usually the case with managers, they'll disappear, and then when they want a job, they sort of pop up on Monday Night Football or a high profile game in the studio, and lo and behold, a couple of weeks later they're usually back in the hot seat. So I'm sure he'll be fine. He's probably sat at home in his rather large house in Formby, enjoying himself at the moment.
I think the other thing as well is Villa have done that thing that lots of football clubs do, where it doesn't go well, so you just make sure that all the blame falls on the manager. And I'm not going to go into it too much now, but there's a bit on my Twitter. Of course, the CEO, is he? I think the chairman, one of the two, the man in charge at Villa is Christian Perslow, who was once of LFC. And the chief operating officer is Paul Tyrrell, who was once the press officer, or was it public relations for Liverpool. And let's just say that there was a dossier put together back before I think Anfield Index was even thought of, when there was a lot of trouble going on with Liverpool and the ownership stuff. Anfield Index would have been around then, but it was well before all of these podcasts and AI Pro had kicked off. And I was, at the time, just doing something called Anfield Road, my own site. And there was a lot of speculation and a lot of people who supported Liverpool and also had some kind of role in some form of media, whether it was fan media or mainstream media, newspaper journalists, whatever. You were worried about your club. What the hell is happening to it? And you'd talk to each other, you'd compare notes, you'd try and get bits of information off other people, and you could work your way in to see what the hell's going on, and you'd talk to each other. Meanwhile, that was shitting the life out of people who were at the club at the time in the boardroom, because they didn't know what the hell we knew. And, well, I will go into it one day, but one day I had a phone call of someone and it ended with a threat. If I dared to tell anybody what had been said in the conversation, how could you ever take a threat seriously if someone's called Cecil? One of those things. So I will get into it sometime, but I think, from Villa's point of view, you want to look outside that dressing room, look outside who's the manager, look at what else is going on at that club. There's other stuff as well, which I know about Villa, which I'm not sure what I can say, but, other little things, and it's not, often with signs of trouble, it's not the great big things that give things away, it's the little things. I was always the same when the stuff was going on with Liverpool's ownership. It wasn't the big things. They always make a lot of effort to get the big story straight. It's the little tiny details that they screw up on that tells you straight away something's not right. And that's the case with Villa, I think. I think as good as it's been in so many ways with the new ownership, I'm not sure it's been run the way it should. I mean, after all, if you've got someone in your boardroom who thinks it's okay to put your tracksuit on and start basically picking the players and choosing the signings for you, even though they've got no actual experience in football other than at non-league level with kids, then you've got trouble. So I say that to Villa, stop singing "Sign On" and start looking a bit more closely at what's going on at your club, because, Gerrard is not the cause of your problems at the moment. And, the longer you believe that, the longer you let the people who should know better stay in charge, which is kind of like taking us back to lettuce again, isn't it? Which we don't want to do. after this, though, now 2-1-0s and that's 7-1 before that. We're on a bit of a run. So it's Forest now, isn't it? And I don't know. I think I've said this somewhere else as well. Their ground is one of those places for, as we saw last season in the Cup, that, you know, the crowd can get on your back. And if you make a bit of a mistake, you know all about it. Is it going to be a bit of a banana skin tomorrow? I mean, they're right at the bottom of the table. They need a win. It just feels like it's one of those, you know, those scripted games that Sky like to have almost, that, you know, giant killers and all the rest of it. Do we need to be worried?
On the whole, no, not really. We shouldn't be anyway. Given the performances of the last couple of games, especially in the league, we should have more than enough for whatever 11 lads out of the 42 that they've signed in the summer that they put out there. I couldn't honestly tell you who plays for Forest. I know a handful of players, and that's purely from fantasy football point of views of looking who is the cheap lad I can put on my bench. Usually Nico Williams.
But he always does well when he's on my bench. You know, I
couldn't tell you how they line up other than listening to Carl and Dave's Scouser pod that I've learned that they played 4-4-2 and kept a clean sheet in the last game. But they're reeling off these players' names, and fair play, if you know more about them players than anyone else, then you're doing well in European and international football.
It's probably the same for their fans as well. 11 games in, they've not seen a lot of them.
I mean, it must be weird. Like, after you want a connection to your players, and you bring in all these lads, and the lads that got you up have sort of been discarded and tossed on the scrap heap. Interesting stuff for you, though. Trent Alexander-Arnold, should he play tomorrow, will be the first player since Don Hutchinson to play a game next to a river that shares his name back in 1999 when he played for Everton at Sheffield Wednesday.
That is one hell of a stat, isn't it? If that doesn't get repeated on the TV over the weekend, then
that's somewhat. I mean, I think it's BT. So it'll be Fletch. Got one for you, dear Fletch. And Macher will whip that one out, and then Fletch will be chucking his little boobies off. But
I hope they've got the drone ready, pointed at the river and everything.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
It's a BT game, isn't it? Right. Okay.
Yeah. I might just go to the pub and just drown it out because it's an away day. But back to Forest, he did give us trouble last year. I think, you know, they're a lot different prospect in terms of what they were last year, because the momentum was behind them. They were going for promotion, and a lot of the players have probably changed. So whatever 11 they line up with tomorrow, I don't think you could probably pick. It'd be names out of a hat probably. We are probably restricted to what we can do in terms of squad, but we should have more than enough to put them aside. And I would just be happy with a 2-0 tomorrow. Clean sheets, as we say, you can't lose if you keep a clean sheet, or Michael Owen quotation. But just the consistency of, you know, if we keep 3 clean sheets in the league, it's a massive confidence boost. And, you know, we get out of there with a 2-0 victory, 3-0, whatever, but a 0 on our side is paramount, and I think we'll always have enough quality and firepower to put them to bed. And, you know, if we get that 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, we're only 3 points behind Man City.
That's mad, isn't it? I mean, I know they'll still have to play them, but that just shows how the season can turn around. And, you know, it's easy to get dragged into all the hype, because that's what, you know, the hype machine loves to have with us, isn't it? And with football in general, you know, everything is all or nothing. Everything is like a little, like we've all got goldfish memory. So that game that's being played is the be all and end all of everything. A week later, all of a sudden, this game's the be all and end all of everything. I'm sick of the title decider weekends that they have like 12 times in 3 months and things like that. It's just hyped, and it's exciting as well in some ways. But, you know, sometimes you just got to kind of step back, have a look at reality and think, you know what? We could go and have a run of 3 bad games now, don't get me wrong, but if we have a run of 3 good games, where are we going to be? Because not everyone is going to be having a run of 3 good games that's above us, so you've got to fight for it. Just Forest as well, it's a bit of a weird one really, because like they used to be our rivals back in the day. The way, I mean, Chelsea kind of think they're our rivals with the plastic fans, and I just think it's a plastic rivalry as well with the plastic flags and all the rest of it. And Man City are trying to kind of do that now as well. And again, it feels like, you know, just go back to hating your neighbours instead of sounding like them. But, you know, again, it's because of where we are. But with Forest, the rivalry back then was a similar kind of situation that, you know, we were winning things, they were winning things. Ups and downs, what about the fans as well? I mean, fans that I know, and I don't know loads of Forest fans, but I know a couple, they're fine, they're all right. And it's like the thing that happens all the time when you meet fans of other clubs. Like, if you kind of meet them in a similar walk of life to yours, you know, it might be, however you know them, might be work or something else, and they're generally all right. It's the ones that sort of make a name for themselves that are the opposite. And that's the sad thing with Forest. And Brian Clough, great manager and all the rest of it, but he at one point was basically parroting what the Sun said, and he was helping spread the myths about Hillsborough. Their fans who were at the game were trying to make stuff up, because it's quite clear, you know, as history has proven, as all the evidence has come out, it's quite clear what happened. And what Forest fans were claiming happened, well, either they weren't at the game or they're just lying. So again, those fans, you know, it's shameful, but it does mean that there is that sort of ill feeling, definitely, between some Liverpool fans and some Forest fans. And, you know, although they're down at the bottom of the table and they're not exactly a big scalp or anything, there will be a little bit of, like, a little extra bit of a smile on people's faces. Not if we beat them, not for all the good fans, but for those fans that, you know, brought shame on the club, in my opinion, back in the day. So fingers crossed. The only other question then is, of course, is to get that win, how are we going to go about saving players? We're starting to see, you know, the injury list. As soon one player comes back, two players go out. It feels like that at the minute, and we've got to rest players, have we, ready for the midweek visit to Ajax, or do we need to keep this momentum going first? I think that's one of the toughest choices Klopp's going to have to make this season, because you can't, in my opinion, although you think you can't go to Ajax thinking it's all done and you're through. We need to come back with a result from there, don't we, of some sort? We can't lose, basically. So,
yeah, it buys us a free hit then in the last game.
Yeah.
You know, in the grand scheme of things, you probably would say it's 60-40, Ajax being the most important game of the next two coming up. Because, you know, as good as we are doing in the league, you've got, 28 games to, you know, claw back any sort of slip up that you might make. But if you slip up against Ajax, you've literally got one shot then to sort of eradicate that mistake. So
that will be some European night if that happens, though, won't it? Back at Anfield. Yeah. I hope it's not. I hope it's the most boring dead rubber night ever.
I'm more than happy to see, you know, Kelleher in goal, Milner at right back, and you know, a couple of kids against Napoli, and give them some European experience or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the job of the manager. That's why he's paid the heavy money that he is, and the medical team and all the coaches and whatever to pick the lads best suited physically and tactically and mentally for these next couple of games. And I think we've already seen, like, the likes of midfield. It's basically 2 from 3, given this new sort of shape that we've adopted. And if Fabinho can come on and not play in concrete tangerines like he did the other night, then he should be okay. And I would probably hedge my bets and say Thiago probably starts on the weekend, but we could more than likely just get by without him. If not, I'm only thinking him because you can get unbelievable football for an hour out of Thiago and probably kill the game.
Yes.
And then you bring the captain on to just sort of shuffle about and do what he does, albeit not great in recent performances. But I wouldn't be too fussed had Jimmy Milner lined up at right back tomorrow and Trent gets a bit of a breather.
Yeah.
Because I don't know enough about Forest, but I think if they had a flying winger, say like Newcastle have got Alan St-Maximin on that side, you would know about it. So I'd be more than happy to see Jimmy Milner there if he is the case. And you know, if Darwin's not 100%, you don't risk him.
No.
We've got a couple of lads there who've started to show a bit of quality in Elliott and Carvalho. They're maturing into into footballers that we want and I like to see. And, you know, the likes of Curtis Jones come off the bench tonight. Oxlade Chamberlain was on the bench. The game will probably come too early for the likes of Navigator. But if we can get these couple of lads on the bench and sort of give them 15, 20 minutes, it will help us in sort of the rotation policy. And, you know, you referred to the 5 subs before. It's only beneficial if you've got players to actually bring on and be of use. If you're literally looking at your bench and thinking, well, out of the 9 lads I've got there, I can only really rely on 3 to do anything of solid nature, then, you know, numbers are helpful. And I think we'll see Andy Robertson back at left back, just because Costa's played the majority of the game the other night, and, you know, it will be a rotation, like you said earlier on with those, but we've got more than enough quality to beat them. And yeah, the key thing is to get out of that game and get out of the Ajax game with two games that you don't lose, the 2 games that we should be winning. But it's paramount, really, that we get through the Champions League and buy ourselves a free game. Yeah.
And it'd be so nice just going into Christmas now when we're in the next, not even into Christmas, into the World Cup, which leads into Christmas, knowing that we're in the good pots in the European draws after Christmas. And
well, we're not going to win the group, so no. You might as well just accept a second. And
but at least you're in the Champions League,
and
you're not waiting for that crappy UEFA Europa League music instead of the Champions League music and all the rest of it, as well as hopefully by then getting a bit of a run in the league. Just quickly, I think on Elliott and Carvalho as well, these are the kind of occasions and kind of moments when young players can really come through and into something of their own, because all of a sudden you're being put into a position of responsibility and you've not maybe not got anyone breathing down your neck just yet, and you can just show what you can do. So, you know, these are the games that sometimes you look back on and think these were kind of turning points for those players, and it's what propelled them into great things. Before we go, there's been so much to fit in 1 week of football. You know, it's mad what's gone on with Liverpool, but it's good as well. It's all good stuff. Even the bad stuff's good because we know we're right, or I think we are anyway. So before we go, I just want to say as well, welcome Tony Evans to Anfield Index. Tony, of course, was the football editor at the Times for a long time. He was a football editor at the Times when all that stuff was going on with Perslow and stuff like that. So, he was definitely one of the people I was speaking to on the phone and comparing notes with for quite a while during those turbulent times. And he's a man who loves the club and has the club's best interests at heart. And I know he's, you know, people argue with him on Twitter and things, but that's what Twitter's for, isn't it? It's quite funny watching him and how people bite when he says stuff. Hopefully get him involved as well in some podcasts as well. And, you know, we'll see what we can do. But he's writing a regular column as well for Anfield Index, which it will definitely be worth a read. I don't know if it's been put out yet, but I've had a...
Yeah, it's dropped today.
Has it dropped? Yeah,
as we record, it's Friday afternoon.
Brilliant.
And it dropped, I think, about a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, have a read. It's really, really good. It's really insightful. It's good to have his voice on here. You know, have a listen. Another local, although he's been down in that London for a long time, but he knows what, you know, he knows what it's about. So always have a listen. And even if you don't agree with him, just remember that it's all coming from the heart. And even if you don't agree, you know, that's fine. Don't sort of accuse him of having any ulterior motive, because I don't think that's the case. And unlike a lot of mainstream reporters and stuff, you know, the club comes first, and that's quite rare, especially when Murdoch's running things and stuff like that. But I think for now, that's going to be us, isn't it? We've fitted in as much as we could in the hour, and we've probably not done justice to half of the stuff that's gone on, but who cares? We'll be back next week, I'm sure, for more, and hopefully talking about a couple more wins. But for now, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.